ethical issues for Justice Clarence Thomas just get worse. Now, with the reporting that Harlan Crow's business was actually in front of the Supreme Court, which is a direct contradiction to what Justice Clarence Thomas said, that although he was accepting gifts, this was just a friend, and his friend had no business in front of the Supreme Court. My name is Dina Sayegh Doll from MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down. So we all heard Justice Thomas say that Harlan Crow didn't have business in front of the Supreme Court, but investigations show that the Harlan Crow holding company did have an appeal in front of the Supreme Court in 2004. An architecture firm was suing them, and ultimately the Supreme Court sided with the Harlan Crow holding company. Now, the holding company, according to them, only had a minority interest in the entity that it was affiliated with that was in front of the Supreme Court, that they didn't have control over that entity. But they don't say in the statement that they didn't have financial benefit from this company. It's quite common for corporations to have, minority stakes in other companies that they are affiliated with. They still financially benefit as a result of that minority stake, even if they don't control their subsidiary, essentially. And so even if they didn't control it, they certainly financially benefited from this fact that the Supreme Court sided with them instead of with this architecture firm. And Justice Thomas just said that Harlan Crow didn't have business in front of the Supreme Court. Even if you have a minority stake in the company, that's still business in front of the Supreme Court. Again, this just shows how much we need ethical standards for the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, Chief Justice Roberts has declined the Senate Judiciary Committee's invitation to come and talk about ethical standards for Supreme Court. He sent a letter instead laying out how they are basically self-monitoring. This letter was signed by all 9 justices, unfortunately. So this is going to be an uphill battle for Congress to be able to pass a law, but I think they should, requiring that the Supreme Court have to, at the minimum, follow the ethical standards that other federal judges have to. But what do we think about Donald Trump and his recent statement saying that if he is reelected, he plans to nominate justice in the mold of specifically Justice Scalia and Justice Clarence Thomas? Certainly, he doesn't mind the fact of these unethical actions that are being revealed by Justice Thomas and the reporting about him.
My administration will again adopt rock-solid constitutional conservatives to be federal bench justices and judges, but in the mold of Antonin Scalia and Justice Clarence Thomas, who, by the way, right now is under siege by the radical left.
And interestingly enough, what's also kind of coming to light is Justice Scalia. He had something kind of similar happen to him. He went on a private jet along with then Vice President Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, as vice president, had a case in front of the court, and there was this outcry of this being, again, unethical and appearance of impropriety that he went on the private jet. Interestingly, Justice Scalia, in defense of that, said that it was government money that was funding that private jet. He didn't even go as far as to be able to say that a private jet was just part of entertainment of a friend. Even Justice Scalia had to say that it was government funding of the private jet. But it seems like we're really just even in the beginning of the reporting around Harlan Crow and Justice Clarence Thomas, because documents have recently been leaked that Harlan Crow bought a passport for quite a large sum of money in the tax haven country of St. Kitts and St. Nevis. And what that means is that his financial transactions are kind of shielded by secrecy in those countries. And if he gave even more lavish gifts to Justice Clarence Thomas that are even harder to discover because of this. And so the investigation into Harlan Crow and his dealings are just beginning. And how is that then going to be revealed about maybe more involvement in Justice Clarence Thomas and what he accepted, when he accepted it, and how he accepted it? Now, it looks like the Senate Finance Committee may be bringing Harlan Crow in to talk to him about his dealings. And in that conversation, we may find out more unethical and perhaps even illegal violations of Justice Clarence Thomas. I think that all of this is showing, again, how important it is for there to be ethical standards. The credibility of the Supreme Court is what gives legitimacy to the Supreme Court. And how can these 9 justices not abide by the same ethical guidelines that federal judges have to abide by? These kind of revelations, this appearance of impropriety, even if nothing actually happened, just even the appearance of impropriety, having this apparent conflict of interest, or this idea that you can maybe buy a Supreme Court justice, is so undemocratic and so un-American that really we need to take congressional action in order to preserve the legitimacy and the credibility of our court.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.